Chapter 15. The first month passed. The struggle for survival in the re-education camp gradually helped me adapt to the hardships. I had been familiar with poverty since childhood, but life in the extremely constrained conditions of the re-education camp was overwhelmingly difficult for me. I could not fathom how others, accustomed to living in comfort, managed to adapt to this life. Long Ton Camp detained mostly high-ranking officials from a former South Vietnamese government. The sudden transition between two extremes of living was too abrupt. Some who had been ministers or deputy ministers and had never done manual labor now had to fetch their own water and perform tasks like everyone else. This created a rather absurd spectacle. The VC forbade us from recounting our past roles. They claimed to want equality among us, but I knew they feared we might form an organization within the camp that could be dangerous to them. They also sought to create division among us for easier control. When writing personal declarations, many people initially use respectful terms like Mr. to refer to their former leaders. The VC forced them to rewrite their statements, replacing such terms with derogatory ones like he or that guy. When speaking about the South Vietnamese government and military, we had to use terms like puppet government and puppet army instead of the Republic of Vietnam or the Armed Forces of the Republic of Vietnam. I, too, had to rewrite my personal declaration for this reason. When speaking with the cadres, we had to follow strict rules, stand 3 steps away, and hold our hats in hand. We were required to address VC soldiers and officers in the camp as cadres and referred ourselves as I. When passing by cadres, we had to greet them by lifting our hats and bowing. These actions symbolized our respect for them and reinforced obedience. The best strategy was to avoid contact with the VC as much as possible. They also forbade us from identifying ourselves as prisoners, insisting we were in the camp for re-education, not imprisonment. We were required to refer to ourselves as camp members. Every evening, we had to attend team meetings before sleeping. The team leader reported incidents within the group and conveyed the cadres' directives. After that, each member had to engage in self-criticism and critique others. This practice was alien to us initially, as we had never encountered such a process before. But the cadres demanded that we take it seriously. We had to strive to identify our own faults and those of others during these meetings. For some reason, we often focus on trivial matters to critique each other, ignoring more serious issues. At times, I had to admit to missing my family, feeling homesick, and being insufficiently focused on re-education. Some criticized their peers for dozing off during study sessions or discussions, or for feigning illness to avoid attending classes or doing chores. Trivial matters became the main topics of critique. Gradually, everyone became like turtles retreating into their shells, making it increasingly difficult to find faults in one another. Self-criticism sessions devolved into admitting minor faults, like homesickness, inattentiveness during study, chatting during lessons, or failing to memorize songs. Others would then stand up to criticize these small mistakes, giving the self-criticizer a chance to promise improvement. Whenever someone was criticized, they had to admit their faults and pledge to correct them. Otherwise, the criticism would continue in subsequent meetings until they did. This was the communist way of conducting criticism and self-criticism. Everything had to be documented and submitted to the cadres. I learned that criticism and self-criticism was a long-standing communist method of mutual oversight, practiced not only in the camp, but across all communist units and institutions. After a few days of living together, we discovered that some informants were mixed into our group. For instance, individuals like Fong, Ba, and Lam, whose backgrounds no one knew. They claimed to have worked for intelligence agencies, but appeared clueless about such work, and none of us recognized them. We warned each other to avoid talking much with these individuals. suspecting they were VC infiltrators gathering information from us. Yet, in a communal living situation, lapses were inevitable. The cadres seemed to know everything we said or did. This created mutual suspicion among us, and some were suspected of being antennas, informants of the cadres, though we could not confirm this. From criticism and self-criticism to informant suspicions, mistrust pervaded the camp. Camp members became increasingly selfish and withdrawn. We lived in isolation despite being in a communal setting. No one dared share their thoughts openly, fearing their words might reach the cadres, a reality captured by the Vietnamese idiom, walls have ears. The VC did not need to divide us. We did it to ourselves. By keeping us hungry, they ensured we thought of nothing but food. By fostering mutual suspicion, they succeeded in dividing us, making camp management easier. They did not need fences or lock cells. We trapped ourselves with the faint hope of freedom after 1 month. I, too, was led by that illusion. I clung to fragile hope of reuniting with my wife and children after a month, though deep down, I doubted its reality. I suspected we might be relocated to places like the Ho Chi Minh Trail or Central Highlands Forest to build roads or railways for post-war reconstruction. The price might be our lives, but at least I could still serve my people in some way. My life no longer felt like my own. I should have perished with the Republic of Vietnam on April 30th, but I lacked the courage to end my life. I threw my gun into the Tonda River and surrendered myself to the re-education camp. Now, my hope seemed as improbable as a miracle. We had no one to turn to. Our government was gone, and our allies had withdrawn. Fences around the camp were irrelevant. We had nowhere to go. The entire country was in VC hands. To the north lay China, to the west Cambodia and Laos, both communist, and to the east the Pacific Ocean. Where could we go if we escaped? I believed only a miracle could save us. Even without their deceit, we would have ended up in the camp. There was no other path for us. Yet their deception kept us there willingly, without thought of escape, as we clung to the faint hope of release after 1 month. The camp's flimsy fence was not what restrained us. It was a VC's systematic lies that bound us to the camp in those early days. We were unprepared for such calculated deceit. It was a remarkable strategy. Deep, a fellow prisoner near me, wrote in a poem to his wife, "I'll return in a month or a year." I think that sentiment resonated with everyone in the first month of re-education. While none of us truly believed in a 1-month re-education, we thought at most it might last a year. None of us dared imagine the prolonged ordeal we would eventually endure. We were cut off from news of the new society outside, except for a few newspapers like Liberate of Saigon, People, or People Armed Forces, which only reported the VC successes in economics and politics. Meanwhile, rumors circulated in the camp. Some claimed Duong Van Minh had been allowed to go to France after surrendering the South. Others said No Coc Tin, the former Minister of Education, was caught trying to escape in Vung Tau Beach. Vice President Tran Van Hung was reportedly under house arrest due to poor health. General Nguyen Qua Nam, the commander of Military Region 4, had committed suicide when the VC entered his headquarters. Rumors also said that Southern civilians were being organized into groups to monitor one another. I could not verify these rumors, but they seemed designed to convey that staying in the camp was our only option, as escape offered no sanctuary. If the rumors were true, what would happen if we escaped? Being caught would mean certain death. No one dared gamble their fate again. After the second lesson and personal declarations, subsequent lessons became mere formalities. Some camp members skipped classes, including me. Instead, I busied myself tending my sweet potato patch. The tropical summer sun burned my skin, making it thicker, and I no longer fear the elements. Within 2 weeks, my scally appearance vanished, replaced by the rugged look of a farmer. Above all, the hard work kept me from dwelling too much on my family. The stock of cigarettes and essential supplies gradually dwindled. A few detainees with money asked the kitchen staff to buy cigarettes and toothpaste for them. This reached the ears of the officers, prompting the camp administration to hold a meeting and announce the establishment of a canteen. Operated by Chinese contractors, the canteen would sell essential goods to detainees. Located near the kitchen, it offered items such as cigarettes, toothpaste, dry foods, and even morning coffee. Those with money could purchase whatever they needed or have someone buy it on their behalf. The opening of the canteen deepened the despair of the pessimistic detainees, especially as the 4th week unfolded, with everyone eagerly anticipating conclusion of the 1-month re-education program. Meanwhile, the optimists viewed the canteen as an opportunity to spend money before returning home, indulging the canteen's offerings and living as though they were back in their own homes. Life in the camp became polarized between those with money and those without. Having given all my money to my wife when she left Chuvan in school, I had no choice but to overcome difficulties. The hardest for me was cigarettes, as I was a heavy smoker. My only option was to barter my produce with those who had money. To save costs, I bought loose tobacco and rolling paper, a practice that reminded me of my grandmother. Back home, she often rolled her own cigarettes while reclining on a cot, sewing for my mother in the tailor shop. My grandmother, who was nearly 70 at the time, had been my closest companion since childhood. Memories of her always brought a vivid picture of my youth, the family altar inherited from my great-grandfather, and the heirlooms of the Trin lineage, such as the engraved incense burner and silver-edged bowls. As the 4th week drew to a close and all 10 lessons were completed, there was no news about the conclusion of the re-education program. The camp detainees split into 3 groups based on their perspectives: the optimists, who awaited the end of the month to return to their families; the pessimists, who were resigned and withdrawn; and those who accepted their fate, prepared for a long stay, saving resources and anticipating further relocation. I belonged to the last group, skeptical about being released, but curious to see what would happen next. I harbored a faint hope that someday I might reunite with my family and live an ordinary life. A dream, perhaps, and nothing more. July 14th, Bastille Day, was the day everyone at Long Ton Camp awaited. A potential end to the month-long program. Anticipation and dread mingled in a strange atmosphere. Everyone hoped for an announcement from the administration, but feared bad news. The daily routine slackened as detainees gathered in small groups to smoke, drink tea, and talk. I harvested sweet potatoes to make dessert for the evening, planning to celebrate the end of the re-education program with Mr. Du Quien Nao, Bon, and myself. Despite the uncertainty, I prepared new rows for planting as though continuing with daily tasks had become second nature. Rumors about a release ceremony swirled, but they lacked substantiation. Whispers about personal relationships and power dynamics among detainees and staff, including the female section, further fueled speculation. Still, I chose to keep my distance, wary of gossip and its implications. The night before the supposed end of the program, no one slept early. Conversations lingered over modest meals and tea, a shared silence reflecting collective uncertainty. Bon, normally lively, was unusually quiet. His uncle, Mr. Nao, smoked sparingly to conserve his limited supply. We sat until midnight, each lost in thought about what might or might not happen the next day. On the morning of July 15th, everyone awoke early, despite no scheduled activities. Some wandered toward the empty hall, speculating that any ceremony might occur elsewhere, perhaps even in Saigon. Still, I watered my garden rows, grounded myself in routine rather than giving into anxious anticipation. Among the detainees, a strange irony persisted. Younger individuals seemed resigned to fate, while the older ones anxiously awaited a release that might never come.